Hello, good morning and welcome to Ireland AM on Virgin Media 1 and Virgin Media Play. What are you doing?
Oh, very still, they're watching.
They're watching, this is what's happening. This is not Tommy Bow.
She said just devastated.
Are you okay?
She said disappointingly.
He's been told he's not Tommy Bow. Ray Foley is standing in for the week while he's off doing his midterm break thingy.
I'm not Tommy Bow. I'm not even going to... I've given up trying to be Tommy Bow.
Yeah.
I nearly got there. Ever so...
Bought all the clothes. He did everything. It just didn't work.
It's the shoes.
The shoes.
It's the shoes with the big giveaway, right?
Didn't work, no.
Good morning. Welcome on in. Here's a look at what we have coming up for you on Ireland AM this morning.
First up this morning, the Israeli Parliament has voted to ban Palestinian aid agency UNRWA from working in Gaza. And we know there has been an awful lot happening in all of Gaza and especially northern Gaza over the weekend. We'll have the latest at 7:15.
With 1 week to go until the US election, we'll be examining the polls and the weekend's presidential campaign at about 7:35.
Certainly an awful lot happened over there at the weekend. Plus at 9:20 for something completely different, we're sitting down with partners in crime and podcasting, Mairéad Ronan and Jenny Kelly.
Cool, looking forward to that a little later on. And Alan Hughes is in this morning. What else is coming up, Alan?
Well, Ray, we're going to meet a woman who has a PhD in, listen to this, RIPie. Yes, she has. And we're going to discuss the nation's fascination with the website. That's at 7:35. And we'd love to know how frequently you or your family actually go on and check it. Send us your comments and WhatsApp us 089 611 111. Plus, we're going to be testing if elastic bands are the key to a youthful complexion. Plus, we're flicking through the chilling chapters of some thrilling reads later on. Now, Deric's in our capital this morning for some medieval magic. What are you up to, Deric?
Elastic bands, they work, Al. Ahead of our trip to visit an Ireland viewers' home tomorrow, where they've gone gaga on Halloween. We've landed here in the heart of Dublin city centre now. It is a bit of a misty, foggy start, but only mainly dry and settled with some nice showers across western and northwestern regions. But it is holding pretty decent right across the week. So good news if you're out trick-or-treating later on Thursday night. Now, Christchurch in Dublin 2 is where we're at this morning. There we find Dublinia. They've got their Mystic Tour up and running. So we're going to be taking you on that tour a little bit later on. We're going to be learning about the history of Halloween dating back to medieval times. So that's all to come right across the morning. What are you dressing up for Halloween, guys? What are you dressing up?
I'm dressing up as Tommy Bow. I'm still working on it.
He's going to try one more shot on Thursday. That's what needs to happen.
Every year.
You need to be chilled to handle Irish weather. That's why Chill sponsor weather updates on Virgin Media 1.
Garmila, Ger, Tommy Bjorn Shaw, Ilorna Cara, Kimalion Clare. We're live here from Christchurch in Dublin 2 this morning. We're off to visit Dublinia on their Mystic Halloween tour, so that's all to come live at 8:45. So do stay with us for that. Now, Gary Cullen with us on cameras this morning. So let's take an opening look at weather for the third last day of October, and you'll be glad to hear it's a dry and settled start out to this morning. Some night showers through South County Dublin, but elsewhere we are seeing some patchy mist and fog trail around. But it is holding dry and settled out to this morning now in those light westerly or variable breezes. Now, as we push away through the day, it is holding dry and settled. So we have a lovely ridge of high pressure, keeping conditions nice and dry. With some nice sunshine out there today. Some nice patchy mist and drizzle trailing around parts of the west to up around the northwest, around 12 to 15 degrees in terms of those temperatures. And nicely then into tonight, will hold dry once again. Clear skies, especially across the southeastern corner of the country. Mist and fog patches, especially inland, with some light rain and drizzle once again across Connacht up around the northwest, with overnight lows there back to around 7 to 11 degrees. So that's how we're shaping up here in Christchurch in Dublin 2 at the moment. Bethany Bjorrish and Lahore Trisha Shacht. Gadishan. Slán.
You need to be chilled to handle Irish weather. That's why Chill sponsor weather updates on Virgin Media 1.
Now coming up, a new survey found 1 in 10 employees are. What could they be doing during their workday? They're taking a
Working?
No, they're taking a nap.
This is the work from homers, though.
I don't know. I've fallen asleep in an office before.
Yeah, well, it depends on the office you work in.
It does depend.
It was it here? Was it in Virgin Media?
We'll see if you're going to do it before 10 a.m.
What was on? What was on the telly? Yeah, we'll be discussing that along with the morning's newspaper headlines right after the break. Do stay with us.
Hello, welcome back to Ireland AM. It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We're starting with the Irish Times. The headline there, Deric Quinlan secretly gave his wife €2.5 million tax refund. The bankrupt property tycoon, who still owes Irish taxpayers €103 million through the state agency NAMA, is believed to have transferred a tax refund to his wife to fund their living expenses.
Rate of 0.5% for widow gives hope to mortgage prisoners, says the paper The Irish Independent this morning. Pepper Finance, which manages mortgages owned by vulture funds, has been forced to give a 55-year-old widow a new 36-year mortgage, meaning she'll be 91 when the mortgage term ends. That's The Independent this morning.
53 children died on Tusla's watch. It goes on to say that tragic Katherine Larkin is one of 53 children who have died while on the radar of the state's child and family agency Tusla in the last 3 years. This is what the Daily Mail is reporting today.
The Herald goes with fears attack man lay dead for days. It states that Gardaí are trying to establish when a man who was found dead at a house in Dublin was fatally attacked after he was found yesterday morning.
The Mirror goes with bank holiday murder horror. Gardaí launched murder inquiries after the bodies of 2 men were found over the bank holiday weekend.
The Sun leads with Eric Ten Swag. Sacked Eric Ten Hag boards a private jet to the Netherlands after being axed as Manchester United's manager yesterday with an expected €18 million golden goodbye. See you later. At 18 mil, that's all right.
I mean, we just want to be a football manager, lads. Don't want to be a tuk-tuk star. That's what you want to be. The Star also goes with that story. Its headline, Taxi for Ten Hag. And
finally, the Irish Examiner this morning. It leads with Israel set to ban UN relief agency. It goes on to say that Israel's parliament has voted to ban the United Nations Relief Works Agency from the country within 90 days in defiance of international pressure to maintain the largest provider of humanitarian aid to the Palestinian population. And that is the first story we're going to deal with this morning.
It is, yeah. Joining us with that story this morning is political correspondent for the Irish Mirror, Louise Byrne, and policy editor for the Business Post, Daniel Murray. Thank you both so much for being here. And Louise, talking about defiance of international orders, that's all Israel seemed to do. And now they're getting rid of an aid agency that last year they previously accused of, being in compliance with terrorists with no links, with no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, and Israel really has had a big issue with UNRWA, which is the aid agency for Palestinian refugees. And it's been this ongoing campaign. But yesterday we saw this bill pass in the Parliament that within 90 days will ban aid going into Israel and to Israeli occupied territory. So you're talking Gaza, you're talking, East Jerusalem, the West Bank, all of these places where there's been a reign of horror really for the last year and where people are so vulnerable and really need this aid. And I saw UNRWA put up on social media yesterday, not only, is it going to be aid, but it's also going to be 650,000 children missing out on education, because that also falls under UNRWA's remit. And what Philip Lazzarini was saying is that, it's setting up a brand new generation for failure by taking their education away from them. And on top of that, you have the aid, you have all the trauma on top of that. So this will be interesting to see if this comes through. It's not being implemented immediately. Like I said, it's 90 days. There's been huge international backlash to this, including from our own Taoiseach and the Taoiseach, who Ireland actually issued a joint statement with Norway and Spain and a couple of other countries condemning this. So whether it goes through or not, we'll have to wait to see. But it's a new low blow, I really think.
Daniel, well, you mentioned the other countries, Ireland, Spain, Norway, Slovenia. And of course, Simon Harris being very firm in his condemnation. He said the legislation breaches, by the way, this is Israel's own move, it breaches Israel's obligations, in international law. This is the UN, though, we're talking about, the UN, RWA, UNRWA. Has there been anything in terms of a statement or a position being declared by any of the bigger players like America?
Well, there's condemnation, widespread condemnation of this, and unfortunately, it's a view from Israel, really, not only of UNRWA specifically as the refugee agency dedicated to Palestinians, but in general, a campaign against the UN in general. And the US has been, alongside others, very open about kind of condemning some of the actions that have been taken by Israel in Gaza and more recently in Lebanon. And I think the role of the US in this is trying to facilitate peace talks, and they're certainly trying to do that again. That has been unsuccessful. We're more than a year now into this most recent war since the October 7th attacks. So the US, obviously coming up to an election itself, some of its kind of international diplomatic power has kind of been sapped from it, I think, while everybody awaits the outcome of that election. And that in some ways is maybe delaying some of the action that can be taken on an international front here. And actually the Middle East somewhat playing into the US election as well. So I think we're going to be waiting until there is a final outcome of the US election before we see the US being able to influence international affairs again on this front.
Yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu said that yesterday that UNRWA workers must be held accountable for what he called terrorist activities against Israel. But he also said sustained humanitarian aid must remain available in Gaza now and in the future. We're talking about over 43,000 people now murdered in Gaza, with over 101,000 wounded, no end in sight, Louise.
And I think that's a really depressing thing. Like, this has been going on a year, and there's been so many false dawns, so many times that, you thought Joe Biden was saying he was going to get to the end of this. And I think, Daniel is right. Until the US election is over, it doesn't seem like America is going to, not that it's not interested, but that, it has other priorities. And I think that'll be the interesting thing as well. Like, who will win? If it's Donald Trump, what attitude is he going to take? If it's Kamala Harris, it's just going to be more of the same. And, it's amazing to think that this isn't as bigger of an election issue.
Yep.
In the States.
Netanyahu seems to be gambling on pushing forward as quickly as he can, as much as he can prior to the US election, and gambling on the possibility of Trump winning, which we'll come back to later on because we're only a week out from that. Let's have a look at the front of the Irish Times this morning. Budget aftermath and state spending top voter interest in snapshot poll. Yes. And this is a sort of a poll of the electorate, and geez, an election could be the next couple of weeks now, Louise. And it's what people care most about. 19% says budget and spending. That's the single biggest one post-budget.
Yeah, and I imagine the government would actually have hoped that might be higher, given we had a €10.5 billion budget giveaway, and they weren't saying it publicly, but privately a lot of them were hoping that this would be enough to win support for the government parties, for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, coming up to that election. And, even talking to politicians, people saying, when will we have the election so that people, this money, this, these double payments, this child benefit, that will all be hitting people's account when they go to vote. So I think, 19%, it's very little, like it's very few people. And I think what this poll looks at is what's what you've noticed the government doing, what you've noticed in the news. And given we're only a month out from the budget now, given that it's only 19%, I think the government might be a bit disappointed about that, really, heading into the election.
We'd love to know if you've had politicians come to your door and you've decided to open it and engage with them. What have you asked them about? Like, what are the things that you want to talk to politicians about? 089 6 111 111. We've had a good few knocking on our door. Have you had?
We had them on Saturday I think it was Saturday afternoon. We had them, and my wife was going out, and she said, "You deal with that now." I'm like, "Damn it!" But the good thing to do is to sit down this evening between you and work out your list of questions that you want to ask, so then you're not surprised then when it actually comes down to it. The other items on the list, Daniel, well, number one is that 19% budget, and we were saying that they'd be hoping post-budget. Well, the interesting figure actually was sentiment towards the budget. They spent $10.5 billion in the budget, but only 45% of voters or of respondents said had a positive reaction to it. They spent $10.5 billion, and 53% of people not particularly thrilled with the budget.
That was the figure that jumped out at me as well. I mean, it's funny, $10.5 billion. We've kind of gotten used to this in more recent years, but they're extraordinary figures to be spending at budget time. And it started with COVID-19, that we started spending huge amounts of money at budget time. That was necessary for obvious reasons, but it has continued year after year with cost of living packages and responses to the refugee crisis and various other giveaways. So to see that amount of money spent, and then to see that more than half of people actually have a negative attitude towards the budget, certainly the government won't be happy with that. And, part of the plan for spending that much money so close to an election is because it was an election budget. So, and that's the thing, is that a focus on spending, we can see that that's the top thing that people are looking at. It's not always a good thing necessarily either. Like, I think one of the things that could come to the fore in this election is waste of public money. And we saw that in the aftermath of the budget. I mean, if you think about how much public spending has increased by in the last 5 years, it's increased by over 50%. So there's 1.5 state spending basically since the start of this government.
Who's better off and how is
who's
the country
better off as a result of it? We can see how that works down to individual issues. There was concern about the phone pouches spending at schools. We had the bike shed controversy. We had the Department of Finance security shed. This could become an issue in voters' minds, and it would certainly be something I would imagine the opposition would like to play on.
It was spending, budget spending, and then it went to housing, then it went to social issues, then it went to immigration and education were at the same thing. So 0896 111 111, what are the things you want to ask politicians about when they come around to your house? We'd love to hear from you. Now, have you ever fallen asleep at work, Louise? Why are we talking about this? What's happened?
So myself and Daniel have decided the official answer is we fell asleep when we were working for other employers, not the ones we're working for now.
Amen.
But this isn't really...
That's what everyone's saying this morning.
A really interesting new study that has found nearly 1 in 10 Britons confess to taking a little siesta, a little nap on their employer's time, which is the bit that amazed me. This costs up to £500 million each week, these British companies. So
in wasted
productivity. So you just think you're having a nap. And I mean, I would argue that's very productive for you, maybe not for anyone else. But yeah, you wouldn't necessarily associate Britain with a siesta, but it would appear a lot of people are getting...
When you watch Coronation Street, they're in the Rovers Return Skull and Pints at 1 o'clock. Of course you want to go to sleep by 3.
Yeah, they're a lazy...
You know what I mean?
They're a lazy layabout. Well, the assumption, though, is that the same statistically... It could apply over here. And there's a focus on the work-from-homers going for a little nap. They're saying between 3 and 4, Daniel. But
that's just taking your time back. I mean, you would have spent that hour or so travelling in and out of work. You'd like to spend it sleeping in the middle of the day. Is that fair enough?
I think that's fair.
So, look, it is a thing, I think, as work from home has become obviously a much bigger issue. I think you can see it in the traffic on Mondays and Fridays compared to Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. It's completely different. So a lot of people certainly spending Mondays and Fridays. It'd be interesting to see if there's more siestas happening on those 2 days of the week. But there's, of course, a big push from employers as well to try and get people back into the offices.
There are.
For the two of you, obviously, you have to be in the office every day. But for a lot of people, actually being, working from home is something that they've gotten very used to. But a lot of employers trying to push for people to come back.
I would push back, and I'd say, as long as the work gets done. And if you take your breaks where you like, you're taking a nap if you like.
Have you taken a nap? I once fell asleep on the Monday after a Electric Picnic in a radio station I worked in. So don't work there anymore. 0896 111 111. Have you taken a nap at work or when you're working from home? We would absolutely love to hear from you. Thank you so much, Irish Mirror political correspondent Louise Byrne and policy editor of the Business Post, Daniel Murray. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you both.
Now, voting for the US election opens in a week's time.
Yes, we're nearly there. We're dissecting the polls and the swing state predictions after the break. Stay with us.
Now, voting of the US presidential election officially opens in just 7 days with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump entering the final stretch in their campaign to be the president of the country.
Here to discuss both candidates' campaigns is Larkin from the Communications Clinic. Good to see you, sir. Well, early voting has started in America.
Started, yes.
But the election day, in-person voting is this day week now.
Yeah,
is that right? Yeah.
Into the final week of the campaign, about 40 million-ish people have voted already, and that's only going to continue to increase. So, I mean, it has started. I mean, there's lots of people who couldn't take their ballot now back, even if they wanted to. Look, the race is tied. If you're talking to anybody and they're fierce confident in their predictions without a logic for it, they don't know what they're talking about. All of the polling will tell us it's tied. It's as close as it could possibly be. It's 50-50. It's a coin toss. It is tied. The 7 swing states, the ones that really, really matter, are all within about 1% within the averages of the polling, okay? Some slightly more towards Harris, some slightly more towards Trump. But if you're in 1%, you don't really know what's going on the ground. It's going to rely on turnout, who shows up on the day, who posts the ballot in early, who is going to be the voters. We don't know that yet. So it's tied, could go either way, could swing hugely one way, could swing hugely the other way, even within that small percent.
Well, we know in 2020 there were some counties that were won by 11,000 votes in a massive country, and that made a difference in an election. But this isn't like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. There's no difference in them. These are two people who are diametrically opposed, showing a big difference in this country, a schism with 50% 100% going either way. So what's happened over the weekend? Because obviously there was this big Madison Square Garden rally for Trump in New York.
Yeah, so that's probably the big story coming out of the weekend. A huge rally in New York. The idea would have been, well, why are you in New York? That's not a swing state. That's not a state that's winnable. But it was a big show. He's always wanted to do Madison Square Garden, and they're all kind of the heavy hitters of the Trump campaign out in advance. And I think it was even more unstable, even more vulgar, wild than people were expecting. It's kind of summed up by one of the first speakers, a comedian called Tony Hinchcliffe, I think is his name, where he made, like, I don't know if you can call it a joke, because even to the crowd he had, they didn't find it funny.
No.
But he basically said, look, the world has gone wild. There's floating garbage in this. There's an island of floating garbage. I believe it's called Puerto Rico. And like, the joke did not land at all. But it's obviously incredibly insulting to Puerto Ricans, and Puerto Ricans are going to be a big vote in this campaign.
That's 3 million American citizens on Puerto Rico,
and to your point about the swing states, 90,000 of those live in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a swing state. Yeah. Joe Biden won it by about 70,000 votes last time. So, I mean, that's not insignificant. And that's a group of voters that Trump has actually been doing quite well with bringing over to his side. So that kind of sums up the rally. But it really was, look, it was full of hate. Some of the speeches from it were like wildly racist, wildly sexist, wildly misogynistic. Trump himself didn't say anything overly, I mean, I'm about to say he didn't say anything overly controversial. For Trump, he didn't say anything overly controversial.
Else did it for him.
Everybody else did it for him. But they walked back. This is interesting.
Well, it goes to show how serious it must have been, because the minute it was said about Puerto Rico, and you had Ricky Martin, J-Lo, Bad Bunny all coming out and saying that down with the sort of thing, Trump himself the campaign had to say.
Yeah, the Donald Trump campaign does not apologise. They do not walk back. That is not their approach. And they walk this one back, saying it does not represent the campaign's views. And a lot of the surrogates are out saying, no, he was just trying to be funny. Doesn't speak for us. We love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is great. So they're worried about that. They also do seem to be worried that the Democratic messaging around the fascist is cutting through. The reason you notice that they're directly calling him a fascist based on comments from
John Kelly,
his former chief of staff, who says he has fascist tendencies. Kamala Harris said, yes, he is a fascist. There's controversy around, is that the right approach? You can sometimes watch Trump and see, is it working or is it not, by how he reacts. And he has started reacting by doing his projection thing, which is, I'm not a fascist. Actually, she's a fascist. I'm not a fascist. You're the fascist. When he starts doing that, you have a feeling this is getting to him, and if it's getting to him, it means it's probably working. That tactic is purely aimed at Republican-leaning women who the Kamala Harris campaign thinks will come out to vote. They have this whole kind of subtle campaign going on, which is, it's a bit big to have to do this, but you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to tell your husband. You can still vote for Kamala Harris and not say it. They're hoping those voters are going to put them over.
You don't have to tell your husband. It's absolutely terrifying, to be honest. It's like something out of The Handmaid's Tale. But let's talk about Kamala for a minute, because obviously the Democratic Party are always great at courting the celebrity vote. And she was in Texas, which isn't a swing state, but she had Beyonce come out and do her Beyonce thing. Does any of this matter?
It's really hard to know. If you take any one celebrity on any one event, probably not. But when you're talking about a very small number of votes, perhaps. Mainly for turnout.
What are you laughing at,
I'm
Michelle?
laughing. Poor old Kelly Rowland was there. Nobody mentioned
Kelly was there. Kelly Rowland was there as well. Sorry.
Celebrities might work for turnout. They get people energised, they get people engaged. A lot of this vote is going to be swung by people who we call kind of low propensity voters, people who tend not to vote.
Well, Swifties for Harris is a huge campaign.
It's people who don't really pay attention to political news, who don't really follow the New York Times coverage of it, but they're hoping to get this in front of their face and then decide, OK, Kamala seems OK, Kamala seems OK, Beyonce likes her, will I vote? And then you get a turnout game underneath that. So a ground game to actually knock on doors. They're knocking on millions of doors a day between the two campaigns at the moment, just saying, in these 7 swing states, come out and vote. So you're kind of trying to get them to see the content before the knock. Then you knock on the door, they've decided, and you bring them to the polling or make them vote. So
there's speculation. Apparently, Taylor Swift has a gap in her schedule, and she may yet do something for her yet. But who cares about Taylor Swift when Trump has Joe Rogan? He spent 3 hours on Joe Rogan's podcast. And
as Harris did on Call Her Daddy.
Similarly. But when you spend 3 hours doing a podcast like that, it's a huge dedication of time. Chatting, there he is.
3 hours.
Did he
Joe
say
Rogan.
anything of note, Larkin? Anything that might swing the pendulum more in Trump's favour?
No is the answer. But merely doing it was the point of doing it. He's courting young men. He's doing very well with young men. He's up, what is it? He's plus 13 with young men in America across all races. So young men, tend to like Donald Trump in a way they didn't before. He's been on all of these kind of macho podcasts that speak to that group.
His son, Barron Trump, who's 18, he's the one who's decided that he's going on Logan Paul on Joe Rogan. He's the one who's been involved.
He's the one who's identified and convinced Trump to do them.
Really?
And he's been doing them for about 3 or 4 months now. And look, it's obviously worked to a degree. Now, I think it's always worked because people get obsessed with this young men like Trump. And look, it's true. And he's done really well with them, as a political candidate. But young women are plus 38 for Kamala Harris. So you have to give the other side of it as well, where young women are massively more enthused by Kamala Harris than they were by, say, Joe Biden.
The sort of echo chamber that we're looking at in the world.
And long term, it's really damaging for America. The gender gap being the widest by far gender gap, plus 54, is between young men and young women. They no longer consume the same media. They no longer live in the same worlds. They don't believe the same thing. That's going to get very, very, very toxic.
7 days, call it.
That's giving me a 2-second thing. No. I think what will happen. Give me 20 seconds. I think what will happen.
We don't have it, Larkin.
Women will turn out in higher numbers than people think. The black vote will hold, which means Kamala Harris will probably get over the line in 4 of the swing states. But that's based on gut. It's based on instinct. If you're looking at data, we do not know, and anybody pretends to know.
Scientists are saying gut is very important these days. Your microbiome, it's all good.
It's the Vibes campaign. Larkin, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. Alan, what's coming up next?
Well, after the break, we're looking at how RIPie became a staple of Irish culture. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the website. How often do you check it? Do you go on it? Do you post on it? WhatsApp us 089 611 111, and we'll see you after the break.
Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, the death notification site RIPie, it has become a necessity for many, but also, of course, it is a phenomenon in our culture.
It really is, and our next guest has actually been studying this. Please welcome PhD student in Digital Humanities and Culture at Trinity College, Shannon Mora. Good morning to you, Shannon.
Good morning.
And I suppose our first question is, why did you want to study RIPie?
It's a great question. So, as a public health professional in the US during COVID-19, I was really struggling to communicate risk and help people understand what they needed to do to protect themselves and other people. And I happened to be in Ireland around that time, and I heard the death notifications on the radio. And I was
Which must be very strange for somebody.
I was struck by the humanity of it, and really the kind of a contrast between that and a flatten the curve graph, which doesn't really deal with the human being. And so that's really what kind of inspired me to kind of at least start questioning where what was happening, and maybe there was something that, about Ireland's death culture that helped you protect each other and kind of adopt all of the restrictions and the guidelines.
Because honestly, it all seems very normal to me. Like I worked in a radio station where we did the death notices.
But you see, I still find that strange.
Because I think Dubs are different from people outside Dublin when it comes to death and going to funerals. And so 0896 111 111, do you think there's a difference between Dublin and the country? Because I showed up at a funeral recently with someone I'd worked with for years, and he was like, what are you doing here? Whereas at home, you might have met someone once and you go to their funeral. Whereas he wouldn't do that.
If you had met somebody once?
Yeah.
No,
probably
not.
Yeah, no. 0896 111 111. So there is a difference even within Ireland, right? So looking from the outside in, what have you discovered and what do you think about how we do this and how we do this with death?
So in my master's, which I completed last August, I did an analysis of 93,000 condolence messages from before COVID, during COVID restrictions, and after restrictions. And I wanted to see if maybe this technology that was being used during COVID, what could I find information about Irish mourning, and were there any changes, now that kind of mourning went online. Yeah. And what I found was a kind of drastic increase in the average number of condolences from 6 in 2019. And then just a year later, the average number of condolences was 133. And then it kind of stays the same even after restrictions are over. And what I documented, I believe, is kind of a transformation of death notification in Ireland to kind of a centralized location where everyone can come in and find about anyone who's died in Ireland and make arrangements to participate in the services.
See, I was saying this to you. I went on RIPie this morning, and I was looking at the condolences, and I was absolutely going through them. And I was going, like, some of these people didn't even know the family, didn't know this person. And it was like one woman was saying, from one mother to another, I just want to... Like, is that strange if you don't know somebody to be leaving a condolence for them?
I wouldn't be the one to judge what's normal, but I would say that I do see some of that in the literature, kind of with Twitter, and there's a kind of a term, rubbernecking, that they would say. But again, I wouldn't judge, what your culture
maybe
is normal.
Strange.
What?
But like you're saying, it increased during COVID is because people were just like, what does it say about us?
Get to the funerals, sure. You couldn't get to the funerals in COVID. So
I suppose, yeah. But you can now. But what does it say about us as a race, as the Irish, that we feel that we can do that?
I would say it's a sign of social cohesion. In the US, you would need to be invited to a funeral. And in Ireland, that's not really the case.
That's true.
So
yeah.
I feel like it's a sign of social cohesion. There is, your mourning rituals have survived kind of a lot of potential interferences over the years. And, even COVID, I feel like you found a way during COVID to do it and do it quite nicely. And kind of that's what prompted the the article about the Irish Times purchasing RIPie and kind of any kind of changes might disrupt that death notification process that's sort of centralized.
Sorry, this was about the Irish Times were planning on purchasing RIPie.ie.
They did purchase
it, and people were worried that there would be a change and that there would be a paywall, and people got very, very angry about it because it is their community space.
Yeah.
So when you're on this community space of RIPie.ie, there's colloquialisms that you notice, right? So what are you noticing?
It's amazing. I was really struck by the stories because the words alone sort of don't tell you the story. But when you start to read, I did a close analysis. The need to anonymize and sort of things. I had to look very closely at the condolence messages, the stories, the vernacular, references to lots of things that you would kind of be normal parts of your day in Ireland. From tea to Guinness to whiskey to rugby to football, the GAA, like these are all things that come in there. Poetry.
That people referenced in their condolences.
They quote poetry from James Joyce to Longfellow to Shakespeare. And I even found words to my favorite song, The Rose by Bette Midler, which was a bit of a surprise. I was like, whoa, I was not expecting to find that.
Yeah.
Some say love.
It is a river.
But come here then, what does it say from you coming from America then? What do you think about our attitude towards death then?
I think it
do you see it in this?
Yes, I think it protected you during COVID, and that's really what my PhD is really going to pursue. I think that I'd like to find out if mourning rituals and culture protects you, is a social determinant of health, what we call in public health, a social determinant of health, the same way that education is, the same way that other factors are. Because I think if you're well versed and trained on how to mourn, which from an early age is my understanding from speaking to people, you know how to do that, and in that sense you respect each other and you took care of each other during COVID. And I think you do it in other ways too. I see it in like your driving test. It's kind of a little bit crazy. How many people would you kill going at this speed? I mean, that's sort of shocking when I saw that. I was like, but it's like kind of throughout your, drinking and driving, it would not be a thing because you're always protecting each other and thinking about, if I do this, what would happen to someone else?
Right, that would be a shock for you if you, in the test, when it's like you'd kill this many people at 50 kilometres an hour. You wouldn't think of it in that terms?
No.
Really?
No.
Because that's what the end result is if you're a bad driver, I suppose. No?
Nope.
It's fascinating.
When you're coming from a different
that you wouldn't
country
do it
to
like
see
that. I suppose we talk about death so very much. Now, currently, RIPie operates, it was bought by the Irish Times, but do you pay to upload for someone, say you're putting up a death notice?
So, to my understanding, neither the family of the deceased pay nor the viewer.
So it's free at the moment.
It's free on both sides. And I think there is some pay structure with the funeral director.
Yeah,
that
it's part of the funeral homes or the funeral directors thing.
And there is
put
some
it in.
advertising that happens from the funeral home and kind of related to kind of funeral practices.
Yeah.
Those.
But you think it needs to stay free?
So this is what I would say. The current structure allows it to be universal with everyone. It's timely 24 to 48 hours. Yep.
Well, do you know what? Hopefully it will stay free because we use it so much. Shannon Mora, a PhD student in digital humanities, thank you so much for coming in.
Lots more still to come. We're back in a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We're starting with the Irish Times. The headline: Deric Quinlan secretly gave his wife €2.5 million tax refund. The bankrupt property tycoon, who still owes the Irish taxpayer €103 million through state agency NAMA, is believed to have transferred the tax refund to his wife to fund their living expenses.
Rate of 0.5% for widow gives hope to mortgage prisoners. Pepper Finance, which manages mortgages owned by vulture funds, has been forced to give a 55-year-old widow a new 36-year mortgage, meaning she'll be 91 when the mortgage term ends. That's the front page of the Irish Independent this morning. 53
children died on Tusla's watch. The paper goes on to say that tragic Kieran Dernan is one of 53 children who have died while on the radar of the state's child and family agency Tusla in the last 3 years. That is today's Irish Daily Mail front page.
The Herald goes with fears attack man lay dead for days. It states that Gardaí are trying to establish when a man who was found dead at a house in Dublin was fatally attacked after he was found yesterday morning.
The Mirror's front page: bank holiday murder horror. Gardaí launched murder inquiries after the bodies of 2 men were found over the bank holiday weekend.
The Examiner leads with Israel set to ban UN relief agency. It goes on to say that Israel's parliament has voted to ban the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, from the country within 90 days in spite of international pressure.
The Sun leads with Eric Ten swag. Sacked Eric Ten Hag boards a private jet to the Netherlands after being axed as Manchester United's manager yesterday. And do you know what he left with? He left with an €18 million golden goodbye. If you could see Catherine Layden's face right now, you would be like, yeah, I believe I'm with you, Catherine.
He left with a Man United kit bag filled with cash. And finally, the Star also leads with that story as well. Its headline there is "Taxi for Ten Hag." No, he's not taking a taxi, he's taking a private jet.
But that's his version of a taxi now.
Yeah, fair
isn't
enough.
it?
You can't get a private jet on the free now. You just keep scrolling down through the options.
Just kind of going, what's there? It'll be here in half an hour. Right.
Love it. Lots of texts coming in this morning. We were talking about a number of topics, and one was the Irish Times. They had a poll which topics that were going to basically dominate the general election. And you're asking, so if a politician called to your door, what would you ask them? And we're getting texts in. Susan says, if a politician calls to my door, I will tell them of my fear for my son when it comes to special needs school places. I've applied to, listen to this, 21 schools before securing a primary school place and face this battle again soon for post-primary. It's absolutely soul-destroying.
And we spoke about this last week, and the fact that some children have to be homeschooled and all you can get is 9 hours of tuition
from a week.
Yeah. And that's happening to 43 children around the country, and they're worried about if it's going to happen to more. Alan says, I've lived in Clare for 36 years. No politician has ever called to my door. 36 years.
Get your mass.
Give us the address. I'm sure we'll get somebody down to you.
There's a vote for you if you can call and say hello to Alan.
Straight away, yeah. But I suppose, we mentioned it earlier, have the list of things you want to talk to them about. Don't let them surprise you, particularly in the run-up to the election.
Yeah, have it at the door.
Yeah, budget, housing and social policies are the top 3. And they're the things that people care about the most. But have your questions ready. Make sure you're prepared.
Indeed. Now, we were also talking about RIPie.ie. There is a doctoral student in Trinity College who is studying the cultural phenomenon that is RIPie.ie. John says, I know of people checking it to see who died locally on the chance that a house will come on the market and they'll approach the family to buy it instead of it having to go through an auctioneer.
That's just brilliant.
Well, yeah, it's brilliant and funny, but it's also tragic. It's
tragic. I know it's tragic that people are dying in a
and it has to go
situation
through probate. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But
That's just...
there you go.
Isn't it? I look at RIPie about 3 times a day, which my children slag me for. If I ask now, do you know such a person, they'll say, why are they dead?
Yes.
I can't ask the question without them assuming that someone has passed away and I've read about them on RIPie.
My father, God rest him, was like, why can't I get that on an app? Because he didn't really know anything about, but he knew that he had an app and he could get into the journal quickly, and he liked going into the journal. Why isn't RIP on an app? Make an app, lads.
Is it?
No, it's still a website. There is not an app.
But you can do that thing where you can add a website as an app.
He did. He had it bookmarked. Oh my God,
right,
did he have it bookmarked? He was on that thing, I would say, easily 22 times a day.
That's an addiction.
It was an addiction.
And how many times would your mum have checked it now before?
I tried to catch her
morning?
I tried to catch her this weekend. I missed her every time. She was playing bridge and she wasn't on RIPie.ie. Anyway.
Between bridge and RIPie.ie, it's an epidemic.
It is
out there.
It is. That's what it is.
Now keep those messages coming in to us. You can WhatsApp us on 089 611 111.
And still to come, we're discussing the dangerous rise of Andrew Tate and his influence over a generation of young men.
We're going to be speaking to the journalist who spent 4 years investigating the social media figure, where he went from being a social media figure to a criminal figure. We'll talk to you shortly on Ireland AM.
You're very welcome back to Ireland AM now. Controversial influencer Andrew Tate, who's currently facing a litany of charges in both Romania and the UK, is back in the news.
He certainly is. Joining us this morning to tell us more about him are journalists who gained exclusive access to Tate's inner circle, Matt Shea and Jamie Tashin. Thank you both so much for being here this morning. I really appreciate it. Jamie, can you do me a favour? Because you were involved with this fella for 4 years. You've made 2 documentaries and now you've got a book on him called Clown World. Tell us a little bit about Andrew Tate for those people who may not know.
Yeah, so for your audience who don't know, Andrew Tate is essentially an influencer who became very, very popular in 2022, primarily for his sort of misogynistic, particularly violent diatribes about women, as well as sort of self-help courses that he was selling to men around the world that would teach them how to be like him. And that could be in terms of making money, acquiring women, often for the purposes of making more money. But essentially, yeah, he's a social media influencer who really became very, very popular in 2022.
Yeah, he became huge, and certainly with those of us with boys or with young men, sons in the house, that were kind of keeping an eye on his influence on them, and I suppose he's absolutely massive, particularly within this demographic. What trouble has he run into? I mean, he's currently in Romania. Tell us what charges is he facing?
Sure, yeah. So he is in Romania. He has 2 separate indictments against him in Romania. Both primarily relate to allegations of human trafficking and grooming. So that is trafficking women into sex work. He's accused of trafficking women into the webcam industry, so performing on webcam for other men and performing on OnlyFans, and giving him or his brother the money from the earnings. The other allegations revolve around rape, violent assault, forming an organised criminal group, trafficking of a minor, and sex with a minor. Andrew and Tristan Tate, his brother, both deny all these allegations, but the trial is due to start relatively soon in Romania.
Now, Matt, how did you become involved in this world? Because you're documentary makers, you weren't lying about who you were and what it was that you were looking for. How did you get into Andrew Tate's manosphere, as it's called?
Well, our first kind of foray into Andrew Tate's manosphere was when we went to Romania to participate in something called Andrew Tate's War Room, which is essentially his sort of top tier secret society that you can join for several $1,000s a year, where you would supposedly learn how to become an alpha male like him and how to make money like him. We went to Romania to kind of participate in this group and also interview Andrew Tate and ask him some questions about grooming and about other things. But as part of that, we participated in something called The Test, which is where you were basically given a choice by Andrew Tate and the leadership of the War Room to fight a professional MMA fighter or not, as a kind of test of your masculinity. And that was an interesting experience, to say the least, because decided to go ahead with it.
Wow.
Yeah. But you got beaten to a pulp, didn't you?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I say fight, but I just got beaten up by an MMA fighter, obviously.
Did you pay, like, because he charges for this, doesn't he? Did you pay for this?
No, we didn't pay. We were there as journalists.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about this is, this is meant to be a test of your masculinity. And if you say yes, you have passed the test. If you say no, you're made by the war room to kind of sit and face the wall and journal about how shameful you are as a man. And so what he's done there is he's got all these paying members of his war room, his super fans, to participate in this kind of test that essentially pries open their male insecurity. And he presents himself as the solution to whatever insecurity these men are feeling. So if you didn't fight, you have to sign up to more courses to learn how to fight. If you did, then you're just further indoctrinated into the cult of Andrew Tate. So it's a very cult-like ritual that he's kind of pushing on men.
And it's a way of just extracting more money from them, like you say, just like
Exactly.
a cult. I suppose, Jamie, I want to ask, what is it he's giving? What are they looking for? What is it that they're missing in their day-to-day lives or in their own interactions generally that he is providing that they're not getting anywhere else?
Yeah, well, I would say Tate has been sort of desperately trying to become famous and become an influencer since about 2018. And he didn't really have any major breakthrough success until the COVID pandemic hit. And I think that helped him out in a number of ways. But primarily, Tate is quite open about saying that his audience is young men. Young men, COVID was an incredibly tough time for everyone, but young men were very isolated, spent a lot of time alone at home, and basically turned to the internet as a means for socialization and an escape. And what they found there at that time was this figure, Andrew Tate. And he constructed this narrative, as Matt spoke about earlier, of alluding to, like, if you're depressed, if you're sad, it's because the world is broken and it's been made unfair against men like you. And I can teach you how to break that broken system and cheat it. And I think why Andrew Tate was everywhere on social media when these young men were going through this period was because he actually very cleverly sort of manipulated the algorithms. Tate primarily shot to fame on TikTok, where he got billions and billions of views, became one of the most viewed people on the platform. But what he did was essentially provide a financial incentive for all of his supporters to flood the platform with videos of him. So he sold a course called The Hustlers University, it was called at the time. It cost $50 to join. And what he said to everyone that did join was, I'm going to give you a sign-up link that you can flood the internet with. And if anyone signs up through that link, you're going to get 10% of the money. And what that essentially did was give this whole army of teenagers and young men around the world a financial incentive to then flood these newly created TikTok pages with controversial, engaging videos of Andrew Tate. So in this very, very short period of time in the summer of 2022, TikTok was just flooded by genuinely hundreds of thousands of different accounts, all posting videos of Andrew Tate every 10 minutes throughout the day. And it sort of confused the algorithm. It couldn't notice that these were all videos of the same person. And because of that, if you were a 15-year-old boy and opened TikTok, every video you looked through for a period was just going to be Andrew Tate.
So it's like a digital a pyramid scheme. I'd be interested to know, because when you guys went on this course, it wasn't 15-year-old boys that were there, I guess, though. Like, they wouldn't have the cash for you to be spending $5,000 to go to this war room course. Who are they?
Yeah, so you can kind of think of Andrew... Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, Matt.
There were some teenagers, there were some kind of older divorced men. They were all men who felt that in some way their life wasn't meeting their expectations of the kind of masculinity that they had been promised by wherever their standard of masculinity comes from, whether they got it from video games, from movies, whether they got it from Andrew Tate himself. But they all felt that they were missing something and that Andrew Tate could provide that answer for them.
There's something here from your book, and it says, if you want to understand the itch that Andrew Tate and the War Room have been scratching in young men, then this is it. Men desire conquest, and this is what's been fed to them. In the real world, Jamie, what does this mean? Because I know of, I was reading an article in The Guardian one day where a teacher in England had said that she has young fellas of 13 and 14 standing up, telling her to shut up, B, you can't tell me what to do. Andrew Tate knows what you're at. So, like, we're talking about these fellas who are unhappy and going and fighting, pretending they're in Fight Club with Brad Pitt. But it's having real-world consequences on very, very young people who are now divided in an us versus them world of men and women, right? Jamie?
Yeah, the real-world consequences are huge. I mean, I've spoken to numerous teachers who have those exact same issues in classrooms all over the country. I spoke to a teacher just the other day who set her Year 7 class in the UK, so that's 10 and 11-year-olds, an assignment for to basically write an essay about one of their personal heroes, and 3 out of her 25 students chose Andrew Tate to write about. I think what he's done is taken something which is sort of a legitimate piece of self-help advice, right, that is applicable to men and women, which is that in order to feel happy and fulfilled, it's good to have conquests. That might be the wrong term, but essentially like tasks or ambitions that you aim towards and overcome. I think what's particularly dangerous about Andrew Tate is that he tells young men that they need this, but then views it through a very narrow, misogynistic and hyper-capitalist lens, whereby he's basically saying the conquest that you as a man need to achieve to feel good are more money and more women for the purposes of exploiting and the purposes of making other men feel envious of you. Whereas, you know, the real life advice might be, you know, maybe sign up for a marathon and have that aim on your calendar to work towards. If there's a career you really want to pursue, or a novel you really want to write, or a painting you really want to do, any one of these wide range of activities, right, that give you some sense of fulfillment, I think that's potentially what young people are lacking. And Tate very cleverly sort of harnessed on to the negative feelings that not just young men, but young people have all these feelings. But he focused on young men and said, I know you feel that way, and I can diagnose the problem. The reason you don't feel good is because you don't have enough money and you don't have enough dominance over the women in your life.
Yeah. It goes to show it took this to happen for us to understand that this can happen and that we need to be more vigilant about it happening. Worth noting that following the release of your documentary, a number of women came forward, and this is why Tate and his brother are now facing these accusations. That was the documentary was The Dangerous Rise of Andrew Tate, if anyone wants to watch it, and the book is called Clown World. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. There it is.
Jamie and Matt Shea, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks a million, lads.
Now we're getting into the Halloween spirit with an Irish classic this morning.
Yes, we are. Katherine Larkin is here to bake some barmbrack.
Some barmbrack.
We love an old barmbrack. Do you want a slice?
Not yet. No,
you're going to wait.
Wait.
I'm being bold and I'm having some right now.
Crack on. There's two different types of
There's
brack.
the tea brack and then there's the yeast brack. And as I said there a short while ago, the yeast brack is a much drier mixture. It's a yeast mixture. It takes longer to prepare. You have to leave it to double in size and then put it in the tin and let it, knead it for 10 minutes and then leave it double in size in the tin before you put it in to bake. So there is a bit of preparation involved.
Okay.
The tea brack is a cinch. Couldn't be easier to make.
And that's the one I'm eating here, and it's much nicer.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
So
I'm looking forward to slice
beautiful.
myself with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Now, into a bowl you put 375 grams of fruit. Now, you can use any combination of fruit of your choice. I actually buy the actual fruit mix. You can get a pack of 375 grams of fruit mix into the mixing bowl. On top of that, put 300 ml has a half pint of tea, cold tea, and you leave it soak for a few hours, 3-4 hours. But
Did you leave it overnight?
Overnight. I left this overnight, yeah.
So it's better probably just do it and leave it overnight,
yeah,
is it?
because it plumps up the fruit as well, right? Now, to that I'm going to add 1 beaten egg, which I've beaten there. And I'm just going to mix the egg into the tea and fruit. Now, this makes quite a sloppy mixture, as you'll see in a moment. Now, to that we're going to add 125 grams, 4 ounces, of light brown golden caster sugar. Light brown or golden caster sugar, same thing.
Is that it?
Now, hold on.
Oh, it's not because you don't have many more ingredients. I'm just looking
Well, we're nearly there. We're nearly there. 225 grams, 8 ounces of self-raising flour. Now, just to mention, there are some people who just have plain flour in the house, don't have self-raising. If you want to convert plain flour to self-raising, you allow 2 teaspoonfuls of baking powder to a pound of flour. You with me?
2 teaspoons for a pound.
For a pound. So with this here, if you were using 8 ounces, 225 grams of plain flour, you'd add 1 teaspoonful of baking powder.
Okay.
You got it?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And to that then we're going to add a good pinch of mixed spice.
Into the flour?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you just throw that in on top of the fruit?
You could throw it in.
You could,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
Now, in we go. And now we just stir these ingredients together until you end up with, as I said, quite a sloppy mixture, quite a wet mixture, like you don't think the fruit is going to stay up at all in it when you see what it's like.
It's not a party unless you've got a sloppy mixture, isn't it? Right, Alan?
There you go.
So, but there's no leaving it then, Catherine?
No,
it's just...
no.
It
With the yeast mixture there is, Ray, but not for this here. No.
Right.
So
it's nice to see actually doing it without the mixer, going back to the old traditional way of doing the baking.
The old elbow grease in the wooden spoon.
A bit of elbow grease in a wooden spoon. There you go.
Can't beat it, yep. Now, into this, traditionally at Halloween, there are all sorts of
So what's this thing of the ring and the rag? The ring and the rag. The ring,
oh, yeah.
So what's the tradition? What do they say?
They're gone a bit out of hand now on it. They've hazelnuts and beans and all sorts of stuff.
I got an iPhone in one year.
You got what? I wouldn't be surprised because God, you're right. With all the stuff that's come up recently, there wouldn't be room for the brag.
I got a scratch card.
Yeah.
An iPhone.
It's a ring. It's a bit of rag. The ring is like you're going to be married. A coin. What's the coin? Does that mean you're going to have?
You're going to win the lotto.
Well, you're not going to win the lotto, but it's like, is it like?
You're going to be wealthy.
Wealthy, yeah.
Then you put in a stick.
What's the stick for?
You're going to be a subject of domestic violence.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Have you heard that?
There's the rag, the coin, the
pea.
The pea, yes, that was the
pea. You're going to be poor all your life. And I think the bean is you're going to be single all your life.
The bachelor's beans.
Bachelor's beans.
So you're not putting any of that in though, no?
I've just a few things here. Coin.
Oh, do you have them? Oh, you do. You're right.
Coin has gone in, so yeah.
Remember, just make sure.
What's your So you've got it wrapped in paper, is it?
Greaseproof paper, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you've one in the oven here. I'll take this one out.
And here,
you're putting stuff in here. Oh, you wrap it in the paper.
Yeah, and you put it into the bracket because it wouldn't be very pleasant to put it in as it is.
No, right. You choke.
Now we put the coin in there now. So you give me out that one, and we put in this one.
Oh, look at this one. Whoops.
Oh, lovely.
Here we go.
There we go. Throw that one in for me.
There you go. That goes in. How long does it go in for, Catherine?
Now, thank you very much for reminding me. 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, 120, 130 centigrade, gas mark 3. And it does take about an hour and a quarter to bake. Now, I suggest you put it in upper shelf position, but if it's getting brown...
Like that one.
Exactly.
No judgment, no judgment. It is quite dark, though.
Prove it. Or you've no idea what I go through here.
Very high standards, Catherine.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, you've no idea. Yeah.
So,
if it's getting a bit over brown, or as you'd call it, burnt, you move it down in the oven, Alan.
Yes.
Okay?
And what are you doing
down
now?
to a lower shelf position. Now, I'm just brushing the top of it with some honey. Now, the one you're tasting there, I just made a little bit of... I just boiled some water, added some sugar, and used that. So now...
that's just a nice glaze on the top of it.
That's just for a glaze, yeah.
Nice and presentable.
So now...
How long will that keep?
That keeps for about 5 days in an airtight container wrapped in greaseproof paper.
Okay.
The tea brack will. This here goes stale very quickly.
Yeah. So that's why it makes the tea brackets much simpler.
Oh, much simpler and
give Ray a taste there. Or no, can you taste it now?
Yeah, I'll take a bit of yours. Why can't I taste it? Because I've got a cold, is it? Yours.
What's wrong with you here?
I don't have cooties.
Do you want to try a bit of the
No, you don't want the dry one. That one's gorgeous.
Oh, that's lovely.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah,
right, that's
lovely.
You can't beat it.
No, you can't beat that in a cup of tea.
So the key is that they're soaking it in the tea for long enough.
It's a trick, yeah.
Overnight.
Yeah. And very simple, just the fruit, the egg, the sugar, the flour, and the mixed spice.
Lovely and simple.
And thank you for making the other ones that were all going, now we won't have any of that because the other one's much nicer.
Well, that's a fun one because the kids are on midterm at the moment. Yeah. They're all off looking for something to do.
Right.
Get them stuck into that.
Thank you so much. Now we're keeping it spooky and lots of spirits after the break with Deric.
Deric's investigating the ghostly happenings in Ireland's past. We'll see after these. Stick around.
Welcome back. Now, Deric, he is having a mystical morning in Dublin. It feels like there's a bit of Robin Hood going on, though, doesn't it?
He's journeying back to medieval times. And He's going to talk about our ancient Halloween traditions. We should have spooky music.
Why are we
and lights.
talking like this?
I don't know.
How are things going over there, Deric?
Never say we don't make an effort, guys. Wow. Anyway, whether you're a mystic Meg or a skeptic Peg, there is no doubting that Ireland is steeped in Halloween tradition. We've come down here to Dublinia in Christchurch in Dublin 8 this morning. Katherine McCormick is with us. And Katherine, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And Katherine, in fact, we have to go fado, because we have to head back to the Iron Age.
Absolutely. So we do have evidence of people concealing objects in their home as early as the Iron Age. It does become a much bigger trend, though, in the medieval period. So people start concealing things like shoes and witch bottles to protect themselves from demons or evil spirits coming into their homes.
OK, so what was the significance of the shoe?
So the shoe is really interesting because people thought that if you had a shoe, the witch or demon would be attracted to the scent of the shoe and get trapped in that instead of attacking the person themselves. Really? We have evidence of that being found on Ainger Street.
OK, but it was only one shoe, not
just
the pair?
Just one, never the pair. Well, very rarely the pair, usually just one.
OK, and witch bottles as well. These were used to trap evil spirits,
I believe. Evil spirits, or to reduce the effect of a witch if they're actually trying to attack you.
OK, wow. So we're going to move on here, right, to medieval times. Now, we're bringing it forward. And, of course, Ireland's steeped in that Halloween tradition.
Yes.
And, of course, the old pagan festival of Samhain.
Yes, so people would have celebrated Samhain in Ireland, so they would have done lots of different events, such as lighting bonfires, like I mentioned earlier, making masks. And we now believe that a lot of people kind of keep on those traditions as well. So we have different food traditions, like eating barren brack, hiding a ring inside to see if you're going to get married. And we also know that authors such as J.K. Rowling would have looked at things like apothecaries or alchemists to help inspire her work when writing Harry Potter. So she did that with a real person, which is called Nicholas Flamel, who was an alchemist working in France.
And with that old medieval tradition as well, the Lair Vaughan or the White Mare. Explain that.
Yes. So the Lair Vaughan or the White Mare was essentially when you dress up you've got the beautiful kind of horse here, and it would allow people to enter the house if you've given them things like food and drink, and it was thought to bring good luck for the rest of the year.
OK, spirits and demons as well, especially on Halloween night. There's said to be that window between...
Yes, so the veil is very thin on that day.
The veil is very thin, right?
Absolutely. So you have to protect from things like coming into your home. So that's why we carve jack-o'-lanterns. Those evil kind of faces looking out from your home is going to help keep any of those evil spirits from entering your home.
All right, Katherine, we're going to come back to you in a few moments' time because David Kennedy is with us. David, we're talking about symbolism, and first up, the horseshoe. Explain the horseshoe.
So the horseshoe, I mean, it's probably one of the most famous lucky symbols in history. Traditionally, it would have been hung up on outside doors. And, of course, the iron properties were believed to possess magical properties that would ward off evil spirits and such. And of course, the crescent shape of the horseshoe as well, believed to be like the protective powers of the moon as well. So very important.
What about St. Bridget's Cross?
So St. Bridget's Cross is obviously something quite specific to Ireland. You can see it here. And this would be something else. Maybe your grandparents would often have it hung up on your wall as well. Obviously related to the patron saint of St. Bridget as well, who was believed to be able to protect, Ireland throughout much of the early spring from February the 1st.
We're passing here. What have we got here, by the way?
So this is our wishing tree. So if you had any wishes, for example, you'd write down whatever you wished for. You place on the wishing tree. Hopefully, with a bit of good luck, you'd get your wish one day.
All right, moving on to superstitions and magical beliefs, because we have so many of these around the country. First up, the fairy castle.
So the fairy castles, of course, probably a lot of us have hiked up Dublin mountains before. One of the most famous fairy castles is up there, Two Rock Mountain. Now, the great thing about this particular fairy castle, it's built over an old Neolithic tomb, and it's believed that the fairies actually built that tomb themselves. So people who pass by it think, oh, that was all built by the fairies. A lot of old superstition with that.
There are thousands of wells around the country as well, 100 here in Dublin. Explain the significance behind them.
So these wells were used back in pre-Christian times. They were used by, again, saints of the period. And one of the most famous would be down at St. Patrick's Cathedral, where it's believed that St. Patrick himself, around the 5th century, blessed people and cured them of their ailments.
Wow. And finally, we're going to finish up with the rag tree. What is the rag tree, David?
So the rag tree is another very important, a bit like the wishing tree. Instead of putting your wishes on it, though, however, you would put rags after you basically rubbed somewhere, like somewhere that might have been hurting you through an ailment or such. You would then tie it to the tree itself, and then the tree, hopefully it would blow off your ailments off in the wind. So.
Wow, absolutely loving that. As you can see, Steve to tradition. Before we let you go, Katherine, you're whipping up something in the kitchen here. What are we doing?
We are. So we're going to make our modern version of the witch's jar, like I mentioned earlier. So these would have been covered, or like inside you place things like your pea, your fingernails, your hair, and some iron nails, but we're going to do it in a bit more savoury manner.
Okay, what have we got here?
This is amethyst. So in the medieval period, people believed that it would stop you from getting drunk. Not sure if it works.
You can load it in there, Catherine.
Nowadays, people believe it's going to bring you like anti-anxiety or calmness.
Okay,
and we're
what's
going to
next?
add in some dried lavender again. So this is also going to help you keep calm on your busy working days.
Okay, this sounds like the perfect potion for me. On the front row, what have we got there?
So this is white willow bark. So people in the medieval period believed that white willow bark would help to reduce pain. And this does actually hold true. There is a chemical inside white willow bark that is used in modern day aspirin. We also have red roses. Rose petals were used to reduce inflammation or swelling in the medieval period. Now we know that doesn't actually work.
Okay,
and then
finally,
we have yarrow. So yarrow was used for blood clotting, and this was actually used in the Second World War on bandages. So that does actually hold true as well.
You're joking me. And you write your little wish in here.
Write your
I
little
wrote
wish
it
and
earlier on.
then
You
pop
put
it
it
in.
into your bottle. I believe you've got a workshop up and running as well.
We do on the 16th of November, so kids can come and make their very own to take home.
All right, okay, there we have it. Where can we find out more online?
Dublinia.ie.
Okay, guys, I hope you learned lots this morning from superstition and all the mystic and magic that surrounds Halloween. Look, I've got my little magic bottle here at you guys in studio.
We'll have to send it back to Ray.
The magic bottle.
Yeah.
The magic bottle.
Ray's a head cold. So
Specific.
is there anything we can get for Ray's head cold? What would you do at home? Do you have a little remedy that you swear by?
There we go. We'll
That
sort
you
Ray
literally, and we'll sort him out.
0896 111.
A little nip of a hot drop.
We'll be back with you in a minute in Ireland AM. We're going to get you to try everything out now.
Now, lots of texts coming in from you this morning on a number of topics throughout the morning. And this was something we were looking at earlier on. Nearly 1 in 10 Britons confessed to taking a nap, excuse me, I'm getting as cold, during their employer's time. So we were saying, have you ever taken a nap? You said you did.
Yes.
You've taken a nap. Have you ever taken a nap?
At work?
Yeah.
No.
He's asleep now.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Which one are you again? Where's the big lad? I'm taking up at work, no, but like, yeah, on a work from home or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
course,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what people were saying. If they're working from home and during your lunch break, if you want to go for a nap for 40 minutes, fair play.
Yeah, Emma says, in my early days of teaching after a school fundraiser and a night out in Limerick, I made a little pillow with my jacket on the tissue dispenser in the toilet and had a good 50-minute nap between classes. Emma, you are a special kind of teacher. Well done, my friend.
That's a great shout.
Sitting on the loo.
Yes.
How many people have slept on this couch? In this
Oh, yeah,
place?
lots of people.
Huge amount of people.
Yes,
Huge
lots of
amount of
people
people
have
slept on
slept
the
here.
couch, yeah.
In my own job, I used to work in a golf club and lots of early starts. I was in college and went straight from a night out to the job, fell asleep at the desk, was woken up by the general manager. No idea how long I was out for.
It's fine. It's fine.
We were talking about RIPie earlier on as well. We were chatting with Shannon, who's a PhD student in digital humanities and basically doing her PhD in RIPie. And it's absolutely massive. Pat says, I check RIPie first thing in the morning and again at about 5:30 to 6-ish. Great also for... What? Just in case of...
Something happened during the day.
You got to bookend it, lads.
Developments.
I am absolutely blown away by this because I had no idea this was such a huge thing.
You'll get there. You're still too young.
Too young for it.
No, but I'm just going, how people check it so often.
My in-laws have the refresh button worn out from checking RIP.ie so regularly. Their WhatsApp group is flat out with notices and with the amount of funerals they go to. The good coat is getting aware at least once a week these days.
Love it.
Sure, isn't that how most conversations begin in Ireland of...
Did you hear?
Did you hear?
Did you hear?
Did you hear?
No, I have never heard, and I can honestly say I've never heard the death notice has been read out on radio.
What?
I've never heard the death notice has been read out on radio.
The death has occurred of...
I've never, and obviously it is a thing around the country.
Yep.
And we just love this from Ray. He says, I'm retired, so I listen to the death notices on LM FM every morning. Yeah. If I don't hear my name, I get up.
It's always good news if you're not in the list.
It's good news when your death has not been named on the raid. Yeah?
I'll put on the fry. We get another day out of it.
Ray and thank you so much for sending that in. I think we're going to have to get you to listen to the Death Notices on Live 95. First time experience.
It's amazing. I just can't get
See, it's not a thing on Dublin radio.
No.
It's not
around
a
the
Dublin
country.
thing, no.
Dublin radio
Thank you so much to everyone who got in contact today. Now, after the break, we're chatting with best pals turned podcast pros.
Yes, Mairéad Ronan and Jenny Kelly are going to be here with us right after these. Stick around.
Oh, God, no, don't talk about that. Welcome back. Now, our next guest turned their 20-year friendship into a hit podcast, aptly titled Jenny and Mairéad Now.
Yeah, now, right now. Please welcome
this very
broadcasters, podcasters, and all around fabulous ladies, and now writers as well. Jenny Kelly and Mairéad Ronan. You're very welcome. Good to see you.
Lads.
How are things? Congrats on the book. It's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous, isn't it? It's a lovely, pretty pink book.
What we know now, lessons on life, love, loss, and friendship. It's all in there. Let's go back to the very beginning, though.
Yeah.
How did you meet each other, Jenny?
Oh, God, we have to go right back 22 years
ago. Yeah, it was on Today FM.
Yeah, I went in on work experience and was just going, I'll do that, I'll make tea, I'll send prizes, I'll do everything that needs to be done here. And Jenny said, I like her, she's got a lovely energy, and we just became really good friends instantly.
Yeah, we just said, you're not leaving, you have to stay. So we just kept her and forced her to work there.
And people at that time with that relationship on the Ray D'Arcy show on Today were obsessed with all of your relationships.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to be a part of it. Like I'd be listening going, what are they up to today? Oh, they were at Hogan's last night. Oh, they all went out together, you know, Will and Ray and all of you together. So people really bought into the friendship
But it
on
was
that show.
real though, because we did absolutely everything together. Like we would go into work Monday to Friday and then we'd meet up in the airport on Saturday and go on holidays.
Yeah.
Like it
Terrible
we actually
life.
did.
It was bizarre.
Yeah.
So there was no weeks apart from each other at all. Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good, by the way. That sounds bad.
I was wondering, was there an air of complaint or complaint with that? But
Well, when you're working together, because female friendships can be incredibly intense.
Yes,
right?
they
Like
can.
they are, and you write about this in the book.
Yeah.
Like it is basically a relationship without the sex.
That's what we were saying. It's a marriage without the sex. That's what a really good female friendship is. You know, you look forward to seeing each other. You're always in contact. You might fight sometimes, argue sometimes, but that's exactly what it is. You know, you support each other. You're there for each other. So it is. I always think it's a marriage, but without the sex.
Our eyes are going, I'm not saying anything.
I totally agree with her.
Agree.
Sorry, that pause was
They're
like,
putting
yes.
that rumour to bed right now.
Well, like a marriage, though, you do need to work at it. Have you guys ever had a big falling out or not spoken to each other?
Yeah, we have. And we actually start the book with that because we didn't want to like hold ourselves up as these like ideal friends. Look at us. Like we've never had a falling out. And we did. We had a pretty bad. It wasn't a falling out as in a big row. It was.
That would have been easier.
It probably would have been easier. It was a lot more difficult than that because my dad, this is back in 2011, he died suddenly, and for me, that grief. It wasn't about kind of beating of chest and crying and screaming and just being very obviously upset. I kind of went quiet and I went very much in on myself. And I think now, looking back, well, I know now, that I expected too much of Mairéad. I thought she should be able to read my mind, that she should be able to kind of fix me and help me.
Is that because your mum died when you were very young?
Yeah.
Your early 20s.
My mum died the year before I ever went into Today FM. So, from the whole time Jenny's known me, I've been without my mum. And I'm myself looking back, I think I should have understood what Jenny was going through a little bit more, but she changed so much during that time, and I didn't know what to do for her. I genuinely didn't know what to do. It was weird for two people who could communicate with just a look with each other, and we knew exactly what each other was thinking. I didn't know what she was thinking anymore, and I found I didn't even know what to say to her anymore.
So we kind of then we kind of went silent.
We
So
went
there wasn't a
quiet on
big
each
row.
other.
We went quiet and we became quite formal. Yeah. You know, like texts or even how we interacted with each other. We became formal.
Yeah.
And then this kind of divide. And the longer it went on, like privately, you know, when I was at home, and poor Ray, like he had to put up with me like crying in his face, obviously so upset about my dad, but so sad that my best friend in the entire world, that I wasn't with her.
Yeah.
And then it dragged on.
Dragged
It
on.
just
Yeah.
dragged
How long?
on. Like a couple of
few
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
There was probably a
Wow.
situation though where this happens out in so many relationships,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like friendships.
I
Yeah.
think-
That
I
it's
think
like
it
I don't know
does.
what to do. There's something going on in their head. There's
know.
something
And
going on
then
in my
it
head.
just, I think what does happen is then they never come back to each other because that might seem like it's too hard to do. Like we said, we were never not speaking with each other. We would send each other the odd text or a funny thing. Or do you know I bumped into today? And I would send that to Jenny, but then she'd come back to me and then that would be it.
Yeah.
But I think it was always there that we wanted to almost get back together.
Yeah.
You know, like, and
So what happened? How did you get
What
back
was
together?
it?
Yeah, so we were in Dunmore East, a place we both love, and we decided we'd go out for a big hike. And
which we had done. We'd gone out for
which
walks.
we had done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in my head anyway, I don't know, I never asked you, had you thought you were going to say something? But in my head, it was like, I'm going to say something. So we'd been walking for probably like a good 3 hours, and I was like, I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it. And then I was like, look, Mairéad, I just think I really want to talk to you about what's happened. And then burst into tears, and then Mairéad burst into tears. And then if anybody had walked by, they saw these two lunatics just hugging each other. And then we just sat down and we were crying and laughing and just going, what was that about?
Yeah.
And it was kind of that quick then. It
It
just
was.
went back to the way it had been.
And you knew,
like
Mairéad.
that.
It wasn't just in either of your heads. You knew as soon as she said it.
Oh God! Oh
Really?
my God! No, I knew.
Yeah.
And it was just something. The air had just been cleared immediately, and we've promised, no matter what happens, never to let anything, you know, affect our relationship ever again.
And it's so lovely because you write about so much in this book, because often like that, we can feel alone. We're going into our heads and we're going to, and you really do run the gamut from love lives to family life, to divorce, to losing friendships, to losing parents. Like everything is inside here. It's lovely. And I could think you can kind of go, oh yeah, I get that. I get that.
When we were talking about writing it, we were like, well, what is it? And we wanted the book to be like the way women talk to each other. So you could be out with your best mate and you could literally go from talking about grief to cleaning products. I just found
dishwasher noises.
Oh, I love the
lovely.
Just started
dishwasher
texting about the
noise.
dishwasher noise.
It's just the nicest noise in the world.
It's at the same time, the way they both went to the side.
But it's like, there's nothing like it. It's like that white noise,
It's so
you know.
lovely.
And then I know when I have the dishwasher on,
click
I
it
can
close.
almost. It's like if I smoked, I'd light up. I just sit back and I'm like, yeah.
So it's modern mindfulness. Isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm saying it is modern mindfulness for us, because I have tried all sorts of mindfulness. I have tried sitting there, I've tried guided meditation, I've tried it, you know, journaling. I've even got a really nice, expensive one. It just hasn't worked for me. I find for me, cleaning is the only time that I get my mind to go quiet and just shh a little bit. And I figure out little problems I might have, if it's with my steam cleaner or my Miele Hoover or whatever. Or
Hashtag not an ad.
Not an ad. Or like a dishwasher sounds. When we wrote the book, we just said, you know, I don't know if anyone's going to actually really, really learn something from this. I think a lot of women will read our book and just nod along and agree and go, yeah.
But there's a lot, you know, there's no silver lining to get grey hair. Do you know, this, like, I mean, we spent half our days with the spray going like
The
mad.
spray.
But there was a lovely thing, and I'm like, oh, Jenny, I want to be your best friend. I don't like
She has
talking
one.
on the phone. I'm terrible about remembering dates. I don't want to go out after 6 p.m. And if I do see you, I probably won't see you again for weeks later.
Okay.
Like, it's just a
So
checklist.
are we like going to be best
She's
mates now?
gone. She's gone. That's it.
I'll
But
be your
it-
friend, Mairéad.
It is.
Always.
It is.
Always.
I know you like
That's
going
it.
out after
But isn't
6
it
p.m.
lovely to
Have
get to that
sex.
point where you kind of know that about yourself? Like for years, I didn't know that about myself.
You felt like you had to do something
I
else.
just did it. And it was only when I kind of sat back and went, no, hang on a second, what actually do I like? And when you say things like that, people like can throw their eyes up to heaven and go, oh, you've just got old. But I'm like, no, I just now know what I like.
But I like...
And also you can be honest about it. I mean, as you get older, you can be
unapologetic
sure about
it
yourself
too.
and be not hide it. You're very honest. You're brutally honest, and you know, straightforward, and you tell it like it is in the book. You're married to Ray D'Arcy, Jenny.
I am, Ray.
How's Ray? How's Ray reacting to you sharing like this?
Oh no, he's been my biggest supporter. He's been amazing through it. Like, he was never like leaning over my shoulder, like, what are you writing now at all? Like, I think when there is any mention of him in the book, like, I obviously let him read it, you know, and I was like, you know,
oh, that's so nice.
Here you go. Well, you know what? Some people, I could have been like this with the arm over, but no, he's just been hugely supportive.
But you lived in a world where, again, people, it was like Ross and Rachel back in the day. It was like, are they, aren't they, will they, won't they, what's happening? And you were the ones keeping it a secret.
Yeah, well, you know, I would know. I mean, people used to always ask me, and I'd say, oh no, they're just a pair of flirts. They're not together at all. They're a pair of flirts. And then I wasn't sure in the early days either. Just thought they got on really, really well. But it was
I think that's what I say in it. Drama. Drama.
Spark, not spark. Yeah. Fireworks.
You did a live podcast last week, the day that you launched your book, and then you rocked over to the GPO,
I know,
where you were nominated in the Irish Book Awards.
I know. I mean, I think it's overused when people say pinch me moment. I don't think I've ever had a pinch me moment like that one. I really was. It felt
was like the perfect day.
It was a perfect day, yeah. And we were in there with like real authors.
Yeah, we were standing together going,
there's Paul Howard.
Real
he writes a book a week.
Yeah.
There was real authors there. But yeah, we have been shortlisted in the lifestyle category, and we are so proud of that, aren't we? Really, really.
We are, and we like that. We actually couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
We are stunned and so grateful. Like, we
It's
just
so
can't believe it.
lovely. I'm just going to say it once more and see what they do. Dishwasher sounds. Oh, lovely. I mean, they're so in tune with each other. The book is called What We Know Now. They've also, of course, got the podcast as well, which you can listen on to, and it's lovely to listen in and just be like, yeah, totally get it. That's fantastic. Jenny Kelly and Mairéad Ronan, you're going away.
We're going away, yeah. We're going to do book signings later.
Book signings.
Yeah, we've loads to do. Busy day.
You're going to hate each other by the end of the day. You spend so much
Never again.
We're never falling out again.
Ever.
If you see them on Dunmoree's crying, you know what's happened. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. So nice to see you. Lovely.
Okay, still to come on Ireland AM, we're putting the boo in books with some... We're putting butt in books, or the boo in books, with some frightful reads.
Not this one. This one is just lovely
This
and
one's
warm.
lovely.
We'll
It's
see
the
you
warm
shortly
one.
on Ireland AM. Do you want to go on the telly? She's still talking.
Talking about being scared. Now, to celebrate spooky season, we're looking at some scary stories that'll have you on the edge of your seat.
There's no stopping her. We are joined, of course, by our reviewer, Ciara King. Hello.
Hi, guys. How's it going? How are you?
You were in Edinburgh recently, you were just saying.
I was indeed. Sorry, we're talking about spooky season.
Yes.
And we're going to be chatting about Day and Night, which is the new John Connolly.
Well, it's what we're starting with,
It's
so
what we're
let's go
starting
with it.
So I actually brought this over with me on my travels to Edinburgh, which is a very haunted, spooky
So
city.
you did the tour where you have to go down.
I did the underground vaults tour, yeah.
And that freaked you out.
It did freak me out. And as I said, it takes an awful lot to scare me. Because you should be more scared of the living, as they say, than the dead.
Right.
There was something in that vault that I did not want to meet. I could not wait to get my
get
2
out.
feet back up into the streets of Edinburgh.
And then you went back to your hotel and you read this?
So I was petrified leaving Scotland.
So tell us about this. John Connolly is one of the best known sort of thriller writers in the world. Tell us about Night and Day.
He's only, I think once or twice he's kind of dabbled with the short story kind of form or whatever. I think the last time was with Nocturnes in 2006, and this is Night and Day. So this is 9 short stories that are spooky, they have supernatural elements, there's science fiction elements and fantasy elements. And my brain now, after the bank holiday, isn't working, so I'll tell you about the short stories that I really, really enjoyed. A Tale of the Caxton Private Lending Library and Book Depository. There are 2 short stories in this collection, and they're based around a library where the characters come to life. And honestly, if John Connolly is listening, I'd love to read a whole book based on that particular library. It was just absolutely fascinating.
So it's a nice one to dip in and out of then.
Absolutely.
You can read one of the stories, put it down.
You don't have to start on chapter 1. You can dip in and out. Abelman's Line is another short story, and it focuses on a Nazi and how war criminals end up getting their comeuppance eventually.
Oh,
and
okay.
The Mire at Fox Tour is another short story that brought me back to, remember when you were a kid and people were, telling spooky stories, maybe at a Halloween or, at a sleepover or, wherever. That kind of brought me back to that as well. Now, the second half of this book, it kind of veers towards a personal essay or maybe a thesis, and John Connolly writes about a horror movie called Horror Express. And it deals all about nostalgia, and he tells you all about the history of trains, and he tells you about his relationship with his father in watching this movie. It's a massive jump away from the short stories for the first half of the book. I wish that I'd seen Horror Express so that I would have had maybe more of an interest in reading, an insight or an interest in reading the actual essay.
Right.
It is very interesting on nostalgia because he really goes into the nitty-gritty and the kind of the philosophy of nostalgia and why we're all kind of mad about nostalgia or whatever. But I didn't expect that. And as I said, I wish I'd kind of watched Horror Express so that I could kind of relate to it more.
But the short stories are very good.
Very, very good.
Okay, that's John Connolly in his anthology.
Spooked me.
Night and Day, especially read it when you're in Edinburgh, obviously. We're going to move on to John Banville. Obviously, has won a pile of prizes for his literary work, but he's back with The Drowned. Is this the 10th in his series?
This is the 10th instalment of D.I. Is it Quirk?
Well, Quirk is the pathologist.
Quirk is the pathologist, and I cannot... Strafford, sorry.
Yes.
Excuse me, D.I. Strafford. So this is the 10th book in this series, and I haven't read any of them. So this was like my first kind of delve into this particular world. So it's set in 1950s Ireland, and the book opens with a recluse who's found an abandoned Mercedes and comes across a man who says that his wife has gone into the water, and there's something really fishy about this man. And the recluse himself is a little bit problematic because he is a known paedophile, and he's been living in a caravan in Ireland. There's a lot of layers to this, and they go to this house at the holiday home of this couple, and they're suspicious, and everything is suspicious, and D.I. Strafford and Quirk are called in to investigate, and obviously it's not straightforward. And there's a load going on with the D.I. Strafford as well. His wife has asked for a divorce. He is expecting a child with the daughter of his good friend, the pathologist Quirk. So there's an awful lot to unravel.
My God, there's a lot. Where's this set? This is a small town in Ireland.
I think it's set in Wicklow.
Everything going on.
I think it's Wicklow. It's kind of set out in 1950s Wicklow.
So this was a series for a couple of series on RT, Quirk with Gabriel Byrne, and now John Banville has stayed with doing these. With these, you can dip in and out. Like, you don't have to have read from the very first one.
He wrote them under Benjamin Black, I think the name, but
originally,
he changed that, I think, 2 years ago. And he came back to John Banville again. I haven't really read John Banville since I was in college, and I read The Sea. So it was kind of nice for me to come back and read him. It had been a long time since I'd read him, but I didn't really know anything about the series.
Because he's a Booker Prize winner, so what did you make of it? I think when you have those titles, do you expect more from a book?
Yeah, I think you do, but that's an awful lot of pressure.
Yeah, I know.
And especially when we're 10 books in, to a particular series as well. And I think that if you love the characters, and also I hadn't read anything that was set in 1950s Ireland in a really long time. I hadn't read like a murder mystery. There's the surprise ending. It's really well written. It's John Banville.
And it is. He's moved away from literary fiction. He wants to do this.
I did. Yeah, no, I did enjoy it. It's heavy. It's heavy, but it's spooky season.
Yeah.
So
And there is it's around Samhain as well and all that kind of stuff in there. That's The Drowned by John Banville. Now we're going to move on to it being Halloween. We want to keep it all murder. Paula Hawkins, she wrote The Girl on the Train. She became a worldwide phenomenon. She is back with The Blue Hour. What's this about?
This is a psychological thriller, and it's got all the elements of a psychological thriller. It's about an artist who is since deceased, and she lived on an isolated island in Scotland. And the island is tidal, so there's a fear of being stuck on the island or trying to get off the island. And her work is being exhibited in the Tate Museum in London, and they discover that one of the bones is actually not an animal bone in the sculpture, but it is a human bone. So this opens up a huge investigation into this particular artist, Vanessa Chapman, and one of the creators of the exhibition travels to Erris Island in Scotland to discover the life of the artist and to kind of do some digging. She also has an ex-husband that's gone missing as well. There's a lot of elements at play. And when the curator, James Becker, gets to the island, he discovers Grace Hassel, who's an old friend of the artist, and they strike up an unusual kind of relationship. It's a page-turner. There's an awful lot to unpack. You hear the artist's voice through essays and diaries that she has kept. Everything's not quite right with Grace. Yeah. You discover her character, you delve into her past as well. A lot of people end up dead in this book. There you go.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that. but it is a page turner. Like, you'd fly through this book. You'd read it almost in a day or a night. She knows
it's a
what she's
proper thriller,
doing.
and she's
It's
got
a
you from
proper
like
thriller.
the second page.
Absolutely. Like, it's brilliant.
You just don't want to let it down.
No, but I mean, I do want to talk to people who've read this book about the ending of the book, because I kind of put it down and I was like, what happened? Did he? Did I? What? So, like, anyone who's genuinely read the book, I do want to chat to you about it, and I would recommend this book for my book club as well.
Brilliant. That's plenty of things to talk about and discuss
absolutely.
with friends.
Yeah.
So, of the 3 books this week, I assume you're picking.
Oh, absolutely.
Paula Hawkins.
The Blue
Hour. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Paula Hawkins.
There we go. Do you have to read it in Edinburgh? Can you read it at home?
You can read it at home, guys. You don't have to read it in a haunted city.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
Ciara King, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Much. Now, coming up next, we're learning if beef fat is the new Botox.
It'd be a lot cheaper, wouldn't it?
Try anything.
We'll see you back here very shortly. You do love trying anything. Double bubble, toil and trouble, beef that bam and bands that double.
Creating a potion for youthful complexion and fresher grin is Jennifer Rock, the nerd of skin.
That is my favourite intro ever. I'm not going to lie.
I ruined my mic. They couldn't hear me on my mic. Anyway, hello. We tried to Halloween it up there. Halloweeny skin. We are talking about, first of all, something that is all over social media right now.
Huge.
Beef tallow. What is it?
So beef tallow, as we know, is an animal fat.
See, I didn't know.
Oh, do we not know?
We don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
I suppose because it's been in the skincare world for a little while now, so I apologise. Okay, so for those that don't know, it is animal fat. It's actually what McDonald's used to fry their chips in when they tasted good in the olden days.
Gotcha.
It's from grass-fed beef, typically, and it's unusual, I'm going to say, in the skincare sector because we've been very much about vegan-friendly, cruelty-free, and now we're going into really celebrating that people are claiming online that by using beef tallow, because the vitamin A, the vitamin F that's in it, which essentially means it has linoleic acid, which is an essential fatty acid. So basically, if you try this one's probably the one that's what you might imagine. It's kind of like a fat-based product.
God. Oh, okay.
So it's essentially like a moisturiser. It comes in lots of different forms, cleansers, serums, as is often the case in skincare.
Smells lovely.
People online are saying that have acne are saying they're seeing huge differences with it. And that might be attributed to the fact that if you've acne-prone skin, you've actually got less linoleic acid in your skin, and this has linoleic acid in it. So it's about giving back into the skin what the skin is void of. My jury is that it's slightly out. There's no clinical data to it.
Sorry, let's just reiterate this. Because I've been looking, there is no clinical data on this at all. It seems to be a trend.
Very much a trend. And look,
but then who's
with
making
skincare,
it then? And why are people buying it? Surely it must have been out there before the TikTokers got hold of it.
Of course, exactly. Yeah. And so that's how they got hold of it, and it goes from there. But I suppose if people are looking for essential fatty acids in their skincare, my guide and guys would be to use things like rosehip oil, which have a better ratio. So in this, should I say, there's linoleic acid, as I said, and another ingredient, this is like a tongue twister, oleic acid. So essentially, oleic acid is what you often find in olive oil. So these two oils do have merit, but it's the correct ratio in which you want them. So my experience with this is that because there's no clinical studies, it's a lot of user-generated opinions, and I feel that they perhaps are slightly dramatising the result of it. And because there's no studies, I don't truly ever tend to get behind it.
You've really hit the nail on the head, though. This move for the past 5 years towards vegan products, not doing any sort of animal testing.
So it's an unusual one.
It is weird.
It's like a pendulum swing. So what people are saying is it's really hydrating, and in that sense, it'll cause no harm to the skin. If you have kind of oily skin, it might help initially. So there's nothing harming about it. It's a beautiful moisturiser. It has an unusual texture. I'm not always a fan of essential oils because it's obviously from, as I said, the animal fat element. You can smell with this one, there's quite a lot of lavender in it. So they're using a lot of essential oils to mask the smell of the fact that it's derived from animal.
Okay.
So it's a huge TikTok trend. It's just to have explored it. So not causing issue, but no data behind it.
Okay. Let's talk retinols. Now,
can
you explain what a
Talking about data.
Can we explain what retinol is? Because you see it everywhere now in the the beauty world.
Yeah. So if we rewind, essentially, retinol is a form of what we call retinoids. So it's like a big family tree. So if you imagine the visual of a family tree, there's lots of different forms within it. From the 1950s, retinol in particular within that family tree has been used for acne-prone skin. From the 1990s, is very much used for anti-aging. It's probably and is dubbed the game changer, the holy grail, the golden goose, if you will, of skincare because of the data that is behind it. So what does it actually do? So I kind of break it into 3 cohorts. It helps with colour first and foremost. And what I mean by colour is pigmentation in the skin. So where you've had whatever, you know, how you're born, or have you got an overproduction of pigment and underproduction of pigment? Have you got a little bit more redness, less redness? It helps with all of that. It helps a lot of sun damage. Second part of people that it helps with is oil. So if you're over oily or if you're under oily, so dry or oily. So actually when you're applying retinol, it helps to normalise your natural secretions. So that's another part. So it helps with, you know, think about pores, it helps with problematic skin, it helps with spots, it helps with just texture. You can usually tell someone that's on retinol because they have quite a smooth complexion to their skin. It actually helps your skin to naturally exfoliate itself.
Look at this. But look, it's been regulated because it goes up in different volumes of it, doesn't it?
So why we're talking about it today, the last thing I want to say about it and what it's really most known for is collagen synthesis. It is the main ingredient across the board in an over-the-counter capacity that can truly trigger your skin's collagen and elastin, which is why it's so heroised in terms of anti-aging. So why are we talking about it? An amazing ingredient, so much data behind it, but the EU are changing. So it's not a ban that's happening because a lot of people there's a lot of TikToks online saying retinol is being banned. It's not, but the EU are restricting it. So it's always been regulated. You've been able to up until now get it in 1%. So you can see on the
there's various percentages.
Exactly, and there's different forms. So what the EU are essentially doing from the 1st of November 2025 is essentially saying that no new products can be brought onto the market above 0.3% for the face and 0.05% for the body. So that's from next year.
0.3%. So this is currently, so I think I use this one, right? This is 0.6.
0.6 and 1, so they'll no longer be allowed on the market because they're deemed to be so potent. And the reason why they're doing this is that I suppose in the last few years what people are doing amazingly is they're using their retinol, they're getting the results, but they're also taking supplements and perhaps there's a little bit of misusage involved. So this is actually a regulation that's been in conversation since 2012. So this is a long-term conversation that's now being brought in.
If you're taking your retinoid, something for your skin.
Yes.
And then you'd be taking a supplement with it as well, is it?
Some people do, yeah. And you obviously get it through your food, through your dairy, through your meat eating. So you do get it in your diet.
So what's been the result?
Particularly with pregnant people, we've always erred on the side of caution. And when it comes to food and external, what's happening is they're conscious of people reaching toxicity overload because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. When I talk to peers in the industry, like a friend of mine, Professor Katrina Ryan from the Institute of Dermatology, you talk to Dr. Darren O'Leary, pharmacist online, everyone's quite surprised by it because it's such a small amount that you're applying a product to, quite a small percentage. The absorption rate is quite low, so it is slightly, I suppose people are confused by it. But at the end of the day, the EU are doing it for safety because they believe and deem it to be fit.
Can you, when you're starting a retinol, would you always recommend that you build up, like from a 0 point up to a 1? So people who are using a 1 now have maybe been using it for years and are now quite able to do it.
Yes, and so what's going to happen, and this isn't going to come into play, so it's not until the 1st of May 2027. So we're talking a little bit ahead of ourselves, which is great. So it's not to fearmonger people.
I was about to say, is that kind of what people will do? They'll just stock up massively.
It's just to be aware of it. The results are there, the science is there. People are confused by it, but it is the legislation. It is going to be the reality.
But children shouldn't be using these.
Exactly. And that's, we've talked about this so many times. There's a lot of misuse of retinol. There's people using it, overusing it, using many products within it, all with a view to getting the most anti-aging results, but you do cause yourself sensitivity. So I believe they're essentially just taking that, confusion
you need to get into your 20s before you even think about it.
Exactly.
Honestly.
Like that,
like from our perspective, it is a sad moment, but obviously we'll always respect that's legislation. It'll be
I'm moving to the 1% tonight while I can. While I can.
You don't need to be doing anything.
Rubber bands.
Rubber bands.
Yes.
Why have we got rubber bands?
So the lymphatic system, as we know, and maybe I shouldn't say as we know, but the lymphatic system is secondary to our circulatory system. But like our circulatory system has its heart, it kind of pumps the blood around. With our lymph, we don't have that. So essentially why we tend to lean on rubber bands.
So people can use lymphatic drainage. They might be doing this, Jen. They might have their gua sha, and they might be doing, like, bring your trying to drain the lymphatic
Just by doing that, what happens?
So when you wake up in the morning, you guys in particular, because you're up and at it early, right? You might look in the mirror and feel that you feel a little bit puffy or a little bit swollen or a little bit kind of, I suppose, and it's to be careful that you don't confuse that puffiness with medical swelling, that it is just because you've woken up in the morning and the lymphatic element is static. So when Alan is displaying this so beautifully, but essentially, oh, you're beautiful, Alan. But essentially, this has gone viral on TikTok where people are essentially like this, thank you for displaying, putting rubber bands and bobbins around their ears. And the goal is that by doing so, you're kind of, almost creating a little tiny pump or pull for the lymphatic system. For me, the jury's out. I do believe in old school gua sha, using my hands, fluid motions. Even if I'm applying my makeup in the morning, I'll always apply it upwards. So it's about bringing it to the ears.
Did that girl's face change?
No, but it's hardly going to harm me.
Exactly.
It's not going to harm me.
And
if I want to put 2 elastic bands on my ears every morning for how long?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
There's no harm in it. I just think there's other ways if you want to
Jennifer
do it.
Rock the Skin Nerd, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Ray, if he wants to put on elastic bands, he can. What's coming up tomorrow?
I'm not going to stand in his way. Busy show tomorrow. Broadcaster and show band legend Ronan Collins will be here. Plus, comedian Rory Stories gives us his guide on parenthood. All that, and we're learning how to cleanse evil spirits from your home. I just drink them. We'll be back here from 7 tomorrow.